Episode 57 BD December 22nd, 2024. Trump's National Security Threats of Government Shutdown. In Episode 57 BD 1A United States. Movie Review of a Complete Unknown. 1B United States. Updates on a possible government shutdown. 1C United States. What do Democrats need to do? Act like an opposition party. 1D United States. The threat to Liz Cheney from Trump Part 1 of 2. 1E United States. The threat to Liz Cheney from Trump Part 2 of 2. 1F United States. The Supreme Court will be a more robust check on Trump than the GOP Congress. 3 legal experts on Trump 2.0 The New York Times. 1G United States. Letters. Aghast at a move to revoke the polio vaccine. The New York Times. 1H United States. RAWSEP View. Trump tariffs are predicted to increase the cost of olive oil in the United States. Just say no. Olive oil recipe suggestions as a holiday gift for readers that contains the heart-healthy ingredient olive oil. 1I United States. The economy is finally stable. Is that about to change? President-elect Donald J. Trump's proposals on tariffs, immigration taxes, and deregulation may have far-reaching and contradictory effects, adding uncertainty to forecasts. For Europe. Europe has a leadership vacuum. How will it handle Trump? With Germany and France both in political turmoil, the new administration of Donald J. Trump will begin at a time of instability for the continent. RAWSEP View. The beauty of the internet is that ideas helpful to other countries can be aired on the internet, and those ideas have a chance of being heard and implemented in the fight against right-wing totalitarian ideas antithetical to human health and antithetical to planet health. Main content. 1A United States. Movie Review of a Complete Unknown. RAWSEP View. Environmentalist Bill McKibben's advice for saving the environment includes attending extremely boring local utility board meetings in your state. RAWSEP's editor enthusiastically agrees with McKibben's advice because she is a geek. Now a new boring activity is opening up for the environmental activist. Paying attention to Trump's attempts to shut down the government from December 20th, 2024 to January 20th, 2025 until the debt limit is raised. This is extremely boring viewing for the environmentalist who wants to save the world. RAWSEP View. Trump's ability to garner any votes at all in 2024 is a mystery to Democrats and really a mystery to anyone with any taste, discernment, or brains. That attitude has got the Democrats in trouble. How to explain the bamboozlement of Democrats? The simple explanation may be that when a Trump voter looks at Trump, he or she sees himself or herself. From the Democrat view, the voter who resembles Trump is overweight and whiny with cosmetic alterations that only emphasize the ugliness of the unhappy facial expression and pouting. From the point of view of Republicans, these uglifications are all deliberate camouflage of the fact that the voter is a human being who is down on his luck because of his own laziness sitting around in front of the TV or internet screen, and after all the boring wastes of time, still sees himself as a potential millionaire because he was suckered into believing that by a millionaire on TV. It is understood by Republicans that a voter can vote against his or her economic interests if it has not been repeatedly pointed out to the voter that voting for Trump is against his or her economic interests. RAWSEP View. Compare what 78-year-old Trump offers to the Republican voter in 2024 to what the now 83-year-old Bob Dylan offered to the liberal Democrat voter when Dylan was 20 to 24 years old from 1961 to 1965, as depicted in A Complete Unknown, a biopic arriving in theaters on December 25, 2024. In a nutshell, and I emphasize the nut portion, Trump is offering Trump voters the riveting spectacle of Congress trading the economic assets of lower to middle-income voters to help billionaires pay less taxes. I think we all know that by now, but just a little public service message before we go on to what Bob Dylan offered his contemporaries in the early 1960s. Politics is stultifying, especially if positive change doesn't happen at the end of political upheaval. Politics 101 says that when minorities and women got access to the ballot box and went on to vote for their own interests that had been overlooked in the past, it was exciting and transformative. Politics 101 also says that when low or middle-income people voted in their own best interests above that of millionaires, it was exciting and transformative. There was also a period in the 1930s in America where the economic devastation of the Depression was so apparent to one United States president that Franklin Roosevelt made the giant strides of creating Social Security and many other relief programs and safety net regulations that got America out of the Depression and essentially created a government that worked for the ordinary people ahead of property owners for the first time. FDR's response wasn't perfect, and there was continued suffering in the Depression, which Woody Guthrie, a folk singer, captured in exquisite artistic form. Bob Dylan was inspired by Woody Guthrie in the early 1960s to capture the dreams and aspirations of ordinary Americans, and without seeing the biopic, RAWSEP's editor imagines that actor Timothée Chalamet captures the spirit of artistic awakening that Bob Dylan went through from 1961 to 1965. And to bring it all back home, Bob Dylan made politics interesting. This movie review courtesy of Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. 1B United States. Updates on an averted possible government shutdown. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. News about the failed House of Representatives vote on December 19, 2024, and successful House of Representatives vote on December 20th, 2024, which brought us closer to a government shutdown on the instructions of Elon Musk and Trump, and then brought us back with a coalition of Republicans and Democrats to keep the government open until March 2025. Trump wanted the debt ceiling to be lifted so that the budget would allow increased tax breaks for the very rich, but enough Republicans objected to this Trump instruction to stop the Trump-initiated stalemate. 1C United States. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. News about the opinion of some about A. What Democrats need to do in opposition. A 1. Highlight opposition. Democrats should act like an opposition party. A 2. Highlight foreign policy weakness, leading to threats to Trumpist national security threats. If Democrats want voters to blame Trump for any potential foreign policy failures, Democrats must work now to highlight and emphasize the extent to which the president-elect wants a more or less inexperienced set of hacks and dilettantes to lead the nation's national security establishment. A 3. Highlight unpopular Trump upper-income tax cuts. Even something as obvious as the connection between Trump's billionaire allies and his support for large upper-income tax cuts has to be dramatized and made apparent to the voting electorate. A 4 highlight the unpopular MAGA economic message Trump has handed as a present to Democrats. Attention is the only currency that matters, and Democrats need some to spend. A 5 highlight the spectacle of Trump's unpopular policies. American politics has always been a game of performance and spectacle. B. What can the Democrat opposition learn from Trump? B1 use Democrat self-promotion with the human faces of ordinary Americans, not or not offered, and not getting the Trump tax cut. Trump rehabilitated himself through relentless self-promotion. Point out the Trump self-promotion which has no follow-through. B2 use Democrat solutions to basic concerns such as lowering high prices for ordinary Americans. Trump built a constituency for tariffs and mass deportation through endless repetition connected to some basic concerns. Point out when those basic concerns are unmet by a second Trump administration. B3 use Democrat solutions that point out the problem and point out the Democrat solution. The public will not make connections and draw conclusions unless you do it for them. See, Trump's hand is not as strong as it looks. C1 Democrats should use the next 2 years to build to wins in the House of Representatives and the Senate in 2026. Trump has a narrow and potentially unstable Republican majority in the House of Representatives and a small but far from filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. C2 Democrats should deny the Trump demands during the next 18 months in order to protect the American people by pointing out the common grounds with Democrats. Some Republicans have to deny lifting the debt ceiling. Trump will start his term a lame duck with less than 18 months to make progress before the start of the next election cycle. C2 Democrats should deny the Trump demands during the next 18 months in order to protect the American people by pointing out the common grounds with Democrats. Some Republicans have to give the average American a break on costs. Trump's great ambition to lower taxes for the rich is poised to spark a reaction from a public that elevated him to deal with high prices and restore a kind of normalcy. Point out when the second Trump administration does not fulfill a promise to deal with high prices. D. But Democrats won't reap the full rewards of a Republican backlash if they do nothing to prime the country for their message. D1 Democrats need to address the half of the country that needs leadership from an opposition to Trump. Half the electorate did not vote for Trump. They deserve leadership too. D2 Democrats need to address the half of the country that needs leadership from an opposition to Trump repeatedly. D3 Democrats need to address the half of the country that needs leadership against unqualified nominees for a Trump cabinet. It is not a distraction to vocally oppose Trump's would-be nominees or highlight his extreme intentions. D3 Democrats need to show that their goal is the public good. Show the extent to which Trump has no plan to pursue the public good and show instead that Trump embodies a threat to national security. 1D United States. Residents against would smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization news about 1D1 first threats from MAGA Republicans to prosecute former House Representative Liz Cheney for chairing the January 6th investigation of Trump. 1D2 secondly an averted government shutdown was briefly revived through the efforts of Trump and Elon Musk. 1D3 need for passage of the Farm Bill was explained. 1D4 fourthly Trump requested that the debt ceiling be raised now under the Biden administration, but that Trump effort was unsuccessful. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, explained. Remember what this is all about. Trump wants Democrats to agree to raise the debt ceiling so he can pass his massive corporate and billionaire tax cut without a problem. 1D1 first threats from MAGA Republicans to prosecute former House Representative Liz Cheney for chairing the January 6th investigation of Trump. On December 18, 2024. Yesterday, Representative Barry Loudermilk, Republican Georgia, released an interim report on the failures and politicization of the January 6th Select Committee. As the title suggests, the report seeks to rewrite what happened on January 6, 2021 when rioters encouraged by former President Donald Trump attacked the U.S. Capitol. The report seeks to exonerate Trump and those who participated in the events of January 6 while demonizing those who were standing against him, rewriting the reality of what happened on January 6 with a version that portrays Trump as a persecuted victim. Liz Cheney responded with a message. January 6 showed Donald Trump for who he really is, a cruel and vindictive man who allowed violent attacks to continue against our Capitol and law enforcement officers while he watched television and refused for hours to instruct his supporters to stand down and leave. Liz Cheney pointed out that the January 6th committee's report was based on evidence that came primarily from Republican witnesses, including many of the most senior officials from Trump's own White House campaign and administration, and that the Department of Justice reached the similar conclusions after its own investigation. Loudermilk's report intentionally disregards the truth and the Select Committee's tremendous weight of evidence, and instead fabricates lies and defamatory allegations in an attempt to cover up what Donald Trump did, Cheney wrote. Their allegations do not reflect a review of the actual evidence and are a malicious and cowardly assault on the truth. No reputable lawyer, legislator, or judge would take this seriously. The 12/20/202 bipartisan deal to keep the government from shutting down extended the Farm Bill for a year and provided about $100 billion in disaster relief as well as about $10 billion in assistance for farmers. It also raised congressional salaries and kicked the government funding deadline through March 14, 2025. 1 United States. United States. Residents against would smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization news on the threat to Liz Cheney from Trump Part 2 of 2. Trump playbook of prosecution against Liz Cheney is tangled with his animus based on Cheney campaigning with Kamala Harris and Cheney encouraging Cassidy Hutchinson to testify. Trump has also suggested over the course of several months that General Mark A. Milley, his one-time chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, should be tried for treason, even executed. Mr. Trump has called for Jack Smith, the special counsel who brought 2 criminal cases against him last year, to be thrown out of the country. The House report on Ms. Cheney, prepared by a Republican-led subcommittee on oversight, was specifically focused on the former Representative Liz Cheney, who broke with her GOP colleagues over their ongoing support of Mr. Trump in 2021. But she has also infuriated Mr. Trump not only because she helped to lead the congressional professional investigation into him, but because she crossed party lines in the election and campaigned against him in support of Kamala Harris. The report claimed that Ms. Cheney may have violated numerous federal laws by secretly communicating with Cassidy Hutchinson, a star witness for the January 6th committee, without the knowledge of Ms. Hutchinson's lawyer. When Ms. Hutchinson was first approached to provide testimony to the committee, she was represented by a lawyer who had once worked in the Trump administration's White House counsel's office. After meeting with Ms. Cheney, she hired a different lawyer, and her subsequent public testimony was damaging to Mr. Trump. It included allegations that he had been warned his supporters were carrying weapons on January 6th, but expressed no concern because they were not a threat to him. The report asked the FBI to investigate whether Ms. Cheney's dealings with Ms. Hutchinson were carried out in violation of a federal obstruction statute that prohibits tampering with witnesses. The report also accused Ms. Hutchinson of lying under oath to the committee several times and suggested that investigators examine whether Ms. Cheney had played any role in procuring another person to commit perjury. A former Justice Department official said that the speech or debate clause of the Constitution would likely hinder any inquiry into Ms. Cheney. That provision, which is intended to protect the separation of powers, generally shields lawmakers from being questioned outside of Congress about official conduct. A former U.S. attorney and FBI official also said that an investigation of Ms. Cheney could be difficult to push toward criminal charges. I believe that in order to go to jail, there has to be compelling evidence that you committed a crime, said the former U.S. attorney and FBI official. That does not seem to be the case here. 1F United States. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. News on any Supreme Court check on Trump. The immunity part of the Supreme Court opinion means that presidents enjoy freedom from both political and legal accountability. One important check is that subordinate executive branch officials, through whom the president must almost always act, should remain subject to criminal law checks. That has always been a powerful force in checking the president, and was in Trump 1.0. The main and very important check beyond that will come from courts, although courts cannot consider every form of abuse. Before Trump 1.0, executive branch norms did a lot of work, but they too are much diminished now. Trump's advisors Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy think that the Supreme Court will be a reliable ally in a second term. But the Supreme Court turned back several of Trump's efforts to steal the 2020 election, rejected Republican arguments about the Voting Rights Act, and rejected the core of the Trumpist independent state legislature doctrine. The Supreme Court will be more of a check on Trump than the GOP Congress. Democrats could disagree with Musk and Ramaswamy, who say that the Supreme Court's decision in Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, overturning Chevron deference, for example, that courts should allow wide deference to executive agency decisions in applying the law, and West Virginia versus Environmental Protection Agency, invoking the major questions doctrine, which means that Congress must clearly authorize executive branch agencies to take on matters of political or economic significance, will always assist Musk and Ramaswamy efforts. When the Supreme Court overruled the Chevron doctrine, in theory, the Supreme Court gave the Trump administration less discretion to interpret existing federal laws and less freedom of action in the regulatory arena. One way of looking at recent Supreme Court administrative law decisions is that it is pushing lawmaking responsibilities back to Congress and away from the executive branch. In a second Trump term, Trump may find his regulatory power severely curtailed. Even if the Musk-Ramaswamy initiative DOGE thinks a Biden regulation runs afoul of the major questions doctrine, the administration still has to comply with many procedural rules in changing the regulation. What legal guardrails prevent the Justice Department and other federal agencies from targeting political adversaries of Trump as president? Biden might have reformed the Insurrection Act to limit the president's ability to deploy troops in American streets, but Biden did not. The Insurrection Act was untouched. Another way of putting it is the Biden administration did not limit or reform the presidency itself. There are legal guardrails that protect political opponents from actual incarceration, but few guardrails protecting them from ruinous investigations. A Trump administration can do a lot of financial damage with groundless investigations and indictments of opponents, even with judicial guardrails. There are still some internal guardrails. There needs to be a reason for even an investigation. Most likely the Senate will confirm Trump's nominees, and Trump won't have to resort to attempting recess appointments or to the Vacancies Reform Act. The instant the Hegseth nomination was in doubt, the MAGA swarm activated, and now his nomination looks much more secure. We've seen key senators express support for Kash Patel. Recess appointing will probably not happen, and Trump has enormous discretion to fill any slots that fail in the Senate through the Vacancies Reform Act. Which obscure federal statute will Americans become familiar with first? The Impoundment Control Act, the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, or the Civil Service Reform Act? The Civil Service Reform Act. 1G United States. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. News on letter writers aghast at a move to revoke the polio vaccine. The New York Times. RAWSEP View. The Trump stance in favor of revoking vaccine approvals lines up with the Trump stance against regulation of air pollution. Both policies value profits for industry above safety for the average American. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. December 18, 2024. Aaron Siri, a lawyer helping Robert F. Kennedy Jr. pick federal health officials for the incoming Trump administration, testifying before the House Judiciary Committee during a live stream in June of the hearing on the COVID-19 response. To the editor. Kennedy aide filed to revoke shot for polio. Front page December 16. A lawyer who is not a doctor but is advising Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has asked the FDA to withdraw approval of the current polio vaccine until the lawyer says placebo-controlled trials can be completed. The soft polio vaccine, however, was definitely proven safe and effective in a randomized placebo-controlled trial. We know because as public school children in Queens and New Rochelle, New York, we were subjects in that trial in the early 1950s. Mr. Kennedy and his lawyers must know that there are real people, real children, who would pay the price for their poor, uninformed judgment. We know. We were there before and after the shots. To the editor. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. When I was 10 years old, our teacher, Ethel Salk, entered our class one morning in a public school on Chicago's South Side and said she had an announcement. My nephew has saved your lives. My nephew is Dr. Jonas Salk, and he has developed a vaccine for polio. We all screamed or cried. We knew someone with polio, and we were frightened of ending our lives in iron lungs that we'd seen in newspaper photos. Polio had spread throughout the state through the summer camps and in our neighborhoods. The thought that our government could be thinking about confirming a non-scientist who may believe in not requiring or removing many life-saving vaccines is a travesty. To the editor. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. In 1987, when my daughter was just a few months old, I volunteered for her to participate in a vaccine trial for Haemophilus influenza type B, also known as H-flu or HIB. Back then, I approached each holiday season with trepidation, knowing that over the next few months, at least one of my patients would present with meningitis, epiglottitis pneumonia, or sepsis from this bacteria. Most parents today don't even know that the DPT/HIB vaccine has all but eliminated that threat. I lost patients to this disease, just as pediatricians before me lost patients to polio, diphtheria, tetanus, measles, encephalitis, and infections from varicella. If we are going to eliminate vaccines, we'd better start teaching pediatricians in training to beware of the onset of winter. To the editor. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. A ballerina contracted polio in October 1956, weeks after her 27th birthday, during a New York City Ballet European tour. Polio shots were not routinely recommended for adults over 25 in 1956, and there had been publicity about a bad batch that had caused minor and major disabilities. The ballerina decided against vaccination, fearing sickness throughout the long transatlantic flight. She never danced or walked again. Entrusting the health of America's future, its children, to someone without a medical degree or even a basic understanding of biology or epidemiology is a criminal act. 1H United States. RAWSEP View. Trump tariffs are predicted to increase the cost of olive oil in the United States. Just say no. Olive oil recipe suggestions as a holiday gift for readers that contains the heart-healthy ingredient olive oil. Bon Appetit magazine online article headline and list headlines from a 5-year-old list. From the article headline: 25 recipes that make olive oil the star it deserves to be. The good stuff is basically like liquid gold, so go ahead and drizzle like crazy. By the Healthyish team. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. January 28, 2019. Olive oil is the original superfood, and it tastes pretty super too. Round out finished dishes with a drizzle of liquid sunshine. We opt for healthyish recipes like these that really let the olive oil shine. January 26th, chicken with herbs and cracked olives. April 26th, quite possibly the best chickpeas. Adding lemon zest and olive oil to chickpeas leads to brightness and full-on flavor. May 26th, flaky cod with celery salad. The garlic curry crisp in this recipe is your new secret weapon. October 26th, radish rainbow salad. A colorful, stunning, and dead simple salad made with a farmer's market bounty of different radishes. November 26th, just basic enough vinaigrette. This is a great excuse to treat yourself to some seriously delicious vinegar. December 26th, lemony cabbage with mint. When all the flavors meld, the mint transforms this dish into an addictive slaw. 17/26 frozen Greek yogurt blackout pie. This no-bake pie is incredibly easy to make and will keep for over a week in the freezer. 2026 slow-cooked cherry tomatoes with coriander and rosemary. Douse cherry tomatoes in lots of olive oil and slow roast to golden deliciousness. 1I United States. The economy is finally stable. Is that about to change? President-elect Donald J. Trump's proposals on tariffs, immigration taxes, and deregulation may have far-reaching and contradictory effects, adding uncertainty to forecasts. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. December 18, 2024. The economic outlook for 2025 is as murky as ever for one major reason. President-elect Donald J. Trump. Many Americans, of course, would dispute that the economy was in good shape. Frustration with high prices, particularly for essentials like food and housing, is a big part of the reason that many people voted to return Mr. Trump to office. But consumer sentiment had begun to rebound even before the election and has continued to improve, suggesting that the public too believed the economy was beginning to normalize. This time, Mr. Trump is inheriting an economy that is solid but slowing. Inflation has eased but remains above the Fed's target of 2%, and memories of the rapid price increases of a few years ago are fresh in consumers' minds. Interest rates are still high by recent standards. All of that means that both consumers and policymakers are likely to be less tolerant of higher prices than they were during Mr. Trump's first term. The unemployment rate at 4.2% in November is low but has edged up. It is taking longer for unemployed workers to find jobs. Households have little debt relative to their incomes, suggesting consumers can keep spending. Productivity growth has been strong in recent years, and the spread of artificial intelligence could keep that momentum going. To Utah. Purple Air Newsletter. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. December 19, 2024. Sandy City UT Partnership. The city of Sandy recently installed 13 purple air monitors throughout their community. They are proactively choosing to be more aware so they can make informed decisions about their air quality. They plan on installing even more sensors to create an active air monitoring network. They're also encouraging residents to consider purchasing their own sensors so they can contribute themselves. Learn more about their project and view readings from the installed sensors on their dedicated Purple Air webpage. 3 World. Facebook post mentioned in this episode. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. Post 1. States where homeowners insurance was unprofitable. The number of states where climate change disasters such as wildfires increase costs has made the number of United States where homeowners insurance is high or non-existent in 2024 increase. Post 2. There is an internet wood burner debate on the chronic illness channel by Mums for Lungs of the United Kingdom. Post 3. For the same amount of heat, wood burning emits more CO2 than fossil fuel burning. A YouTube video by Dr. Gary Fuller. Post 4. The United States Department of Agriculture under the Biden administration connects improved internet in 18 states. Would smoke pollution a hidden harm? Post 5. Open enrollment for healthcare coverage announced by Nancy Pelosi. Post 6. Yet another house fire caused by a wood stove. Poor Fairbanks, Alaska will never have clean air with this HPBA and EPA-sponsored disinformation. The disinformation? Burn wise, Alaska. By burning the right wood the right way in the right stove, you can save money. RAWSEP View. Don't burn wood to begin with when there are clean alternatives in 2024, starting with heat pumps that work down to 40 degrees below zero and lower monthly electric bills immediately. Heat pump rebates of up to $8,000 are offered in 2024 based on a sliding income scale in many United States. From the Netherlands, a woman feels trapped in her own home by wood smoke from a near neighbor's indoor residential wood burning invading her yard and infiltrating her home, requiring her to stay inside her sealed home with multiple air purifiers running. Post 7. For the first time in 2 decades, no women chair committees in the House of Representatives. Photo of former House of Representatives member Liz Cheney. Lighting a fire? 3 questions for the Dutch Lung Foundation about the dangers of the fireplace. Maybe stop burning stuff? Department of Fire and Emergency Service, Western Australia. A large number of calls about smoke. Post 8. Air. Asia's deadliest health crisis. Clean Air Night in the United Kingdom. The Enlightening. Shining a light on the truth about wood burning. Post 9. Wood smoke stories. Doctors and scientists against wood smoke pollution. The heavy smell of wood smoke pervades everything. Fire and biodiversity, Western Australia. The smoke started about 70 kilometers north of Walpole. The pink dot is the sun. Post 10. Purple air monitor readings where Asia meets Western Australia. Post 11. Delhi's lethal air quality endangers pregnant women. From the Netherlands. I myself now have an inhaler. Post end of descriptions of Facebook illustrations. For Europe. Europe has a leadership vacuum. How will it handle Trump? With Germany and France both in political turmoil, the new administration of Donald J. Trump will begin at a time of instability for the continent. RAWSEP View. The beauty of the internet is that ideas helpful to other countries can be aired on the internet, and those ideas have a chance of being heard and implemented in the fight against right-wing totalitarian ideas antithetical to human health and antithetical to planet health. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. December 19, 2024. When President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine met European leaders for dinner in Brussels on Wednesday, the shadow of President-elect Donald J. Trump hung over the gathering. Germany is where the government of Chancellor Olaf Scholz just collapsed. France's Macron and other leaders are preoccupied by economic troubles and the surge of far-right populist parties. This week, Mr. Trump's aides were discussing creating a buffer zone between Ukrainian and Russian troops that would be patrolled by 40,000 European soldiers. Such a proposal would cause an outcry in Berlin and London, where the refusal to send troops has been an article of faith since the early days of the war. The 800-mile buffer zone between Ukraine and Russia is not going to happen, said a director of a think tank based in Berlin. Europe couldn't do this without U.S. support. The challenge is for European leaders not to be provoked or divided by Mr. Trump, but to make sure that Europe has a seat in any diplomatic negotiation involving the United States, Ukraine, and Russia. Germany is caught up in a heated debate over the economy with its export-led model at risk because of Mr. Trump's threatened tariffs. France has fallen into paralysis. In Britain, where voters elected a Labour government with a majority in July, the country has economic problems. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has expressed a desire to draw Britain closer to the rest of Europe. Trump had a dismissive, contemptuous attitude toward the EU, which we remember from Trump 1. While German candidates Mr. Merz and Mr. Scholz both pledged to maintain military support for Ukraine, if elected, they have promised an increasingly wary German public that they too will push to bring the conflict to a close. In 2016, when Angela Merkel, then Chancellor, got off to a chilly start with Mr. Trump on trade and military spending, Mr. Merz's right-leaning Christian Democratic Union sent a representative to the Republican National Convention. Germany's role in the Western alliance on Ukraine is so central that American diplomats say any Trump plan for ending the war has to include it. But the German election expected on February 23, 2025, and coalition negotiations that will follow suggest Germany's direction may not be clear until April or May 2025.